Beliefs about vampires, werewolves, witches, and wizards are widespread.
Exactly what is a serial killer?
Our house was 2 rooms, and there was 7 of us.
He held the bat like this.
That's why I have characters who sort of expose themselves.
And everybody always say, Coach Carter, Samuel Jackson is taller than you. I said, I know, but I think I'm better looking.
All right. Well, thank you, Laura Lee. I appreciate the introduction, and thank you all for coming. This is not something that I do all the time, but it's something that I do like to do, and something that I am working towards, trying to get up here and speak to folks across our business and our industry. So the introduction was really good. I'm not going to sit up here and bore you about my career, but I'm going to kind of tell you a little bit about how I started and then go through. This is the how to become a leader or becoming a leader. So this is going to be the Jason's tidbits on how to become a leader. So you can read a lot of books on a lot of these things and get a lot of it. This will be my take on it. So I am from Hammond. I was not born here. I was moved here by my parents when I was 3 months old. Grew up in Hammond. Went to Holy Ghost Catholic School, which is about 2 or 3 blocks that way. From there, I went to Hammond High. I got a great education at Hammond High. And I started my college career at Southeastern. I loved Southeastern. Southeastern was that was the only college I knew was Southeastern, because my parents went to football game. Well, they didn't have football at the time, but basketball and baseball games. And I grew up around this university, and this is where I wanted to come to school. Now, I wanted to be an electrical engineer. That's what I originally wanted to do. They didn't have engineering at Southeastern, but I wanted to take my prereqs here, and I did that for 2 years. Transferred to LSU, and I graduated with a civil engineering degree in 2006. And from there, it was right after Katrina. And I went to work for an engineering firm working on the levees. One of the things that we were trying to do was figure out, why did the levees break? And so I spent about a year sampling soil, looking at all those things, the things that I went to school for. Did that, and then they moved me over to ConocoPhillips in Lake Charles to do some environmental engineering work. And I was there for about 1.5 to 2 years, and then a big hurricane rolled through there, and the project that I was working on essentially got blown away. And at that point, I said, you know what, it might be time that I start maybe looking at something different. I was interested in the construction side of things. I went to school to be a design engineer. I really never did a whole lot of design. When I started to do design, it just didn't interest me once I got into it. And so Barriere was hiring. I worked there as a field engineer in the construction group on the North Shore for a while. Did that, then I transferred over to our asphalt business. We are the largest asphalt producer in the state of Louisiana. We produce about 1 million tons of asphalt a year. So worked my way up through the company. Barriere was a family-owned business. So when I got to Barriere, I knew that I didn't have Wilson behind my name. The Wilsons owned the business. They had been running that business for 72 years or so when they sold. But I knew that, I had to work as hard as I could in those roles that I had. And that's was my goal, because I knew at some point, more than likely, I was going to reach a ceiling. And I was okay with that, because I loved the company. I loved what I was doing. And, in 2020, they approached me and said, look, you've done so many great things. And at that time, I was the vice president of our asphalt operations. They said, you've done all these things. We need somebody to be the face of Barriere that's not a Wilson, because we're about to sell this business. So I'll get back to that when I get to some of these topics that I want to talk about. But at that point, I helped present the business to outside companies that were looking to buy us, and we were purchased by a company called CRH in the beginning of 2021, and in 2022 I assumed the role of president. So the first non-family member to be a president of a 70-plus year old company. So with that, you know, when I was thinking about what can I say to y'all that y'all may have not read in a book or done any or seen any of these things, and gone to class and all that thing and all those things. And so, you know, I was thinking, if I was sitting in your position right now, in that chair right there, what would y'all want to know from me? So some of the things that I thought about was, what do I look for in entry-level employees that are coming out of college, or folks that are not in college and maybe come on as an hourly employee for us? What are some of the skills and the things that I look for? So those are the things that I'm going to kind of talk about. So, you know, as an entry-level person coming out of college, this is your job right here. This is what you've been doing for the last 4 or 5 years. And when you come into the workforce, you know, what are some of the things that you can look for? So first off is reliability. And when I say reliability, you know, you all have to go to class every day, right? You gotta show up, you gotta do your homework, you gotta do all those type of things. When you get into the business environment, I'm looking for somebody that, A, is gonna show up to work every day when they're supposed to. B, somebody that is there to learn, is there to understand that you probably don't know everything. And are you willing to put the time and the effort? And I'm not talking about, I need you working 60, 70, 80 hours a week to do all those things. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about somebody that, if the task is given to you, do you have the skills, or can you use the skills around you that you learned, A, in school, or use some of the resources that are around you to figure those things out? Can you meet the deadlines that we need, right? Are you somebody that we can rely upon? And so I'm going to tell you a little story. When I came out of college, and when it comes to reliability, I thought that, you know, that meant, all right, I'm getting paid for 40 hours a week. So I'm only going to work 40 hours in a week. And when I was out on the levees, that was not a 40-hour-a-week job. I was getting paid 40 hours a week. I was probably working 60, 70 hours a week. And it got to a point where I just felt like, you know, maybe I'm not going to show up to work on that Saturday that they need me. Or I'll come up with some excuse about why I can't be there. And I did that more and more, to where it got to the point where the project manager that was running that job couldn't rely on me. So he picked up the phone and called my supervisor and said, I don't want Jason on this job anymore because I can't rely on him. And you want to talk about a difficult situation to sit in front of your boss, and your boss say, well, look, I had to pull you off of this job because the project manager couldn't rely on you. That was a wake-up call. That was a wake-up call. And, you know, I look back at that and I say, there's probably different things I could have done differently. I probably could have talked to that project manager and said, look, I'm getting burned out. I need some time off. I need those different things, instead of me just making excuses about why I couldn't be there because they couldn't rely on me, right? So that's number one, reliability. I mean, if you could show up to work and you can do the task that is needed, you're going to go a long way, right? And that's not all of it. The second point, resourceful. Are you resourceful? And when I mean resourceful, can you use the resources around you to figure out problems? Because problems will arise. And if you're given a task, more than likely that supervisor is not going to give you, you need to do this, 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 and this. Not going to give you the steps to do it. They want to see if you can figure it out, right? Now, with some guidance. I'm not saying that you know, a supervisor doesn't need to give you guidance, but, you know, can you use and leverage the ability of folks that you work with and then other resources within the business? Can you be resourceful? That's number 2. Resilient. And when I say resilient, there's stuff that's going to happen in your career that is not going to go the way that you want it. And you're going to come to a crossroads of what do you need to do. And I'm going to give you another story. So when I made the decision to come over to Barriere, I was working in our construction group and put a lot of time and effort. I was working as hard as I could. I was trying to learn as much as I could because it was different than what I was used to. And I was there for about 2.5 years. And then we get brought up into the office, and it was told to us that they were going to shut down that division of the company. And at that point, you're at a crossroads. What was I going to do? Were they going to keep me? Was I going to need to go find another job? And at that point, I could have easily have probably got up and went and did something else. But I stayed true. I had my mentor who saw the hard work that I was putting in another group said, I want you to come with me. And I know that you don't know the asphalt, because at the time I didn't know the asphalt side of the business. I know you don't know that, but I'm going to teach you. And I need you to be committed to this, and I promise you I'll teach you, right? And that resiliency, right, is because I'm telling you every single day is not going to go the way that you want it to go. You're going to have those type of issues. That was a big issue. But you're going to have, if you try to plan your day out and say, okay, some fire is going to come up. How do you deal with it? Can you use your skills that you're learning to deal with it? So you need to have resiliency. The last one, at an entry-level position, open to feedback. And now you're going to get positive. Everybody wants what? Positive feedback. Everybody wants that. I want it. Everybody in this room wants it. Constructive feedback is how you take it, right? You can get constructive feedback and you can take it and go crawl in that hole over there and feel sorry for yourself and not use it as a learning tool. And a lot of times what you're going to see when you get into these businesses is that you're going to get some of both. Sometimes you may not get a whole lot of positive feedback at all. You may just be constantly getting constructive feedback. But it goes back to being resilient. Can you take that constructive feedback and learn from it and get better, right? And look, in your position, I was the same. When I got there, I wanted as much feedback as I could get, right? I had one supervisor that really only gave me feedback once a year at the evaluation period. You have the opportunity when you get into a business to tell that supervisor, this is what I need, right? Give me that feedback, but be open to that feedback, because when you want it, it's going to come, and it may not be what you want to hear, but learn from that. So that's at an entry level. So our entry level, I would say that would be our field engineers. Those are the things that I looked for when I was a project manager and I was working with my field engineer. Now I'm going to move to when you become a manager, right? Because a manager is different than a leader. And that's some of the things that you're going to hear as I go through this. A manager is managing people. A leader is leading people. What I'm going to talk about right here is a leader, not a manager, okay? When you get from that entry-level position and now into a role as a manager, now you are supervising people more than likely. That is one of the hardest things that you will do, is supervise people, right? So the leaders that I look for are the ones that are going to do these 4 things, okay? The first one is, are you a teacher? Are you somebody that can take somebody from an entry level and train them, teach them? Not only teach them the things that they need to know in their role, but also teach them things to take over for you when you get the opportunity to get promoted, right? The ones that I tell all of my younger managers, you will never move up in this business unless you can train your successor, right? And look, you You have to be understanding that they don't know everything, that they're going to make mistakes. Some of the things that I struggled with when I first became a manager is I'm a people person, and I didn't have any children, okay? So I didn't really understand what it means that sometimes you got to let them make a mistake. And what my problem was I would see the things coming and I wouldn't let them make those mistakes. And sometimes it's okay to make a mistake, because a lot of times you learn a lot from those things. But helping to guide along the way is extremely important. And being there as a resource for them, asking how they're doing, asking if they have problems and all those things is I mean, we have a lot of teachers in this room, right? And you learn from them as well, because they're putting up with y'all every single day, right? So, but can you be a teacher? Can you train the future? Do you have a mindset for succession planning? Do you have that mindset, right? Because if you do, you're going to go a long way. All right, second, firm but fair. And when I say firm but fair, can you lay out the expectations for your folks? This is what I expect of you every single day. This is what I'm looking for you every single day. And then when you do that, can you hold them accountable for those things? I'll give you a story. One of my best, he's my vice president. He is very, very, very close to his people, like very close. And one of the things for him is being that close could sometimes cause some issues with accountability, right? Because you know them, you know their spouses, their kids, their all this kind of stuff. You know, sometimes you have to separate your personal life and your business life. When we're at work, some of the best ones that we have, when you're at work, are you able to separate that and give that accountability, that feedback, all those things to those folks? And as long as you've set the expectation, the accountability should come easy, right? Because you've already given that expectation of what you're looking for. So some of the best supervisors and leaders that we have are the ones that can do those things. The third, confidence and presence, right? In our industry, and pretty much any industry, you want to have confidence in yourself, right? You want to have confidence in what you're able to do, especially at a manager level, because if you don't have the confidence and you don't have the presence, all those type of things bleed down, right? They bleed down to the folks that work for you. So, you know, now, it's okay to be confident. It's not okay to be arrogant. And, you know, some of the things that I've seen, when I was young, I was in my late 20s, I was extremely confident because I was very good at my job. I was very good at what I did, and I was extremely confident. And my mentor sat me down and said, I like the confidence. I like that. But you are showing arrogance as well to not only people within our business, but our customers as well. You're showing that arrogance, and that arrogance will get you in trouble. And I took that to heart. And I said, because that's something of the things that I don't like arrogance in a person. Like, that's off-putting to me. And to be told that I was doing that goes back to that feedback. I could have said, no, that's not going on. I could easily have said that and to continue to do the things that I did, and probably wouldn't be where I am today, right? Because, you know, your confidence also leads into being humble. And, you know, you can be very confident in your ability, but you also need to show that humble side too. And so the last thing, are you a motivator? That is the biggest thing for me. Can you motivate people? Because the best leaders that I've ever seen, the ones that can motivate, the ones that, they're not going to follow you just because of who you are. They're going to follow you because you're a motivator. And when I come back to motivate, so what it takes to motivate you versus what it takes to motivate you versus what it takes to motivate you, completely different. Do you have the ability to see that? Because everybody's different. And that's why I go back to managing people is the hardest thing you will ever do. Ever do. Because, you're a motivator, you're a psychologist, you're a friend, you're a lot of different things that they don't teach you in school. Okay, unless you're, going into that business. But some of the things that they never taught me. So I had to learn a lot of those things. I had to learn them the hard way because I tried to motivate everybody the same way. Not everybody's motivated by money. Most people are motivated by success. Not all, but most are, right? Some people like a tremendous amount of positive feedback, and you're giving them that positive feedback all the time, that motivates them. Some people like to know all the time how they're doing, and they feed off of that, and they want that positive, and they want that constructive feedback. But you got to have the self-awareness to know what it takes to do that, right? And I hope you take that away from here, because when you do eventually get to that role, you got to be able to see it early. Because if you're just trying to motivate somebody that the things that you're trying to do is not motivating them, you'll never get the most out of them, right? You just won't. So those are just some nuggets, right? And I didn't want to sit here and talk to y'all and just bore y'all to death. And because like I said, this isn't my day job. I am not a motivational speaker. I am a construction worker at heart. And I love what we do every day. I love our people. We do have over 400 folks, and I try to know everybody's name, and I try to know something about them and something that motivates them, right? That they want to talk about. I have folks that they'll talk to me an hour about raising rabbits from Franklinton, okay? I got folks that like drag racing. I have folks that like baseball, football, cooking. If I'll leave you with this one thing. As you work, your way up through whatever business you go to, connect with people. Try to connect with it. Try to make that connection. You're not going to connect with everybody. You're gonna meet folks that maybe you don't get along with or any of that, but you got to be cordial. You got to try to understand of who they are and why they are. So I greatly appreciate y'all taking the time to listen to me, and I'm open to questions.
All right. So my question is, like, when you're doing the hiring process, do you see people with internships stick out more compared to candidates that don't do internships?
Yes and no, right? I don't think you necessarily have to have an internship for us to, point you out. It doesn't hurt, and at least if you have an internship, it shows that you've made the effort to try to go learn outside of this environment, right? Because this environment is great. When you get into the business world, it's a lot different. And we use our internship as a extended interview, and most companies do that, right? They're watching to see how you engage in the business. Are you picking up some of the concepts? All those type of things. That's where internships do bring a lot of value. But is it necessary? No, but it definitely helps.
Absolutely. Zachary Brinkman.
Yes, sir. Holden Merritt.
You spoke briefly about having a mentor. How important is having a mentor?
It is extremely important, right? Now, look, not everybody will have that opportunity. And look, your mentor doesn't necessarily have to be your supervisor. That's another thing. And it was extremely important for me because, my mentor and I did not see eye to eye all the time. But he was able to help me see, because he had so much more experience, he was able to help me see past some of my, sometimes you're hard-headed and you're locked in on what you want, what you're doing, and he was able to help me see past that and see maybe a different perspective. And I didn't bring this up, but when I got into this role, one of the things that when I talk about myself that I always enjoyed doing was mentoring or training people and all that stuff. But when I got into my role, the folks that work for me are very talented. They're very experienced folks. They still need, me to be there to help them, but they don't need me as much as I would like, and that's okay. So what I started to do was every year take on 2 folks within the business that never worked for me before, and folks that I saw that either had a lot of high potential or somebody that has high potential but was struggling in their role. And so I started that last year. So I had 2 from last year, and I have 2, and I still connect with my 2 from last year, but they've graduated from that, and it's extremely rewarding. Extremely. I get more from them than they will ever get from me, and they'll never know that. Well, Kayla, they'll never know that, but I do. That's what drives me. That's a motivator for me, is training people. Because our business wouldn't be where it is today if we didn't have people that were actively mentoring our future leaders in the business.
I don't want to be too loud. Okay, so
No, you good.
my question was you were talking about how you're being a mentor. What would be the hardest thing for you to do as a mentor?
What's the hardest thing to do as a mentor?
Yes.
Is to give that honest, constructive feedback. That is the hardest thing, because it's not the easiest thing to do, because what is the first thing that folks do whenever you give them, I don't want to say negative feedback, because that's not, it's constructive feedback. The defenses go up, right? And look, I'm not perfect at it, because I'm very blunt most of the time, but you got to be able to give that constructive feedback and say, look, I've dealt with this before. A lot of times you have dealt with that before, and say, this is how I handle it. Not necessarily that that's the way that they need to handle it, but that's how I've handled it. And that is the hardest thing as a mentor, right? The other thing is to watch them fail, right? It will happen. Nobody is 100% successful at everything they do every day. They will make mistakes. And as a father of 2 young children, you watch that. And, I didn't have kids before that, and so I kind of learned some of that stuff along the way. But as a parent, you see those type of things, right? Because you're their mentor for, let's say, 18 years until they roll out of the house. So, but that is the hardest thing to do as a mentor.
My name is 18 Bucks.
My name is Kenneth Honore, and I would ask, during your career journey, through each transition, what was probably your biggest adversity?
That is an outstanding question. What I would tell you is, when you assume a new role, you tend to have, well, at least I did, it's hard to let go, right? I'll kind of give you an example. So when I went from a project manager, so somebody that was managing the day-to-day things that goes on a project, money, safety, quality, everything falls on you. When I transitioned to a area manager, so somebody that was over, you know, a P&L for the company. So at that point, I moved from a project manager to an area manager, you know, supervising, let's just say 8 direct ports and about 100 people underneath me. What I tended to do was revert back to what made me good as a project manager. And that was being on top of things, attention to detail, structure, all of those things. When I got into that area manager role, at that point, you have talented project managers that are working for you, that are doing those things every day. But because I'd been doing it for so long, that's what I wanted to do. And so what I would do is I would dig into their stuff. I wouldn't let them do their jobs. And that's hard. It is difficult because that's what you've been used to for so long. And then you get into that, and then you breed distrust with the people that work for you because you're digging into their stuff that really they're responsible for, and you should just be a resource for them, helping them, guiding them, all that stuff. Instead, I'm trying to go put out fires that I don't even need to be dealing with. They need to deal with it. And every role that I've had that struggle of holding on. It just is human nature, right? I was good at that thing, so I'm gonna try to help, but you're not helping. You're not helping somebody do their job. So that was the hardest thing for me. Yes, ma'am. That's a great question. I would tell you that every person is different. Some folks want you to hold their hand along the way, right? Don't ever want to let go because they know that Jason is a fixer, a doer, right? Because you got a lot of people that are doers, and some that they just don't. So I think it's based off that individual person of knowing how much you need to do to get them to a point to where they can take the lead and start doing these things. And a lot of that goes back to giving that feedback and having enough self-awareness of somebody to know their strengths and weaknesses and be able to tell them, look, I see that you're you're coming to me with a lot of your problems with zero solutions. So I have no problem being that resource for you, but I need you to come to me with solutions, not just the problems, right? And so, and look, everybody's different, so it takes some folks longer. You have to use your ability to identify that once you get into those certain roles. Hope that answers your question. Yes, sir.
My name is Tim Anstedt. You gave a lot of tips for graduates that are pretty much finished with their college time. But what would you advise freshmen like me to have 4 more years to develop some good skills? Like, what skills are those?
That is a great question. As a freshman, I mean, your whole life's ahead of you. I wish I was sitting in your seat right there, but it is. When you're here, you're learning on, how to structure your life around, being able to study effectively, being able to take the test, being able to hit the milestones that you need to get through college. This is your job, right here, right? But you're also making relationships with people, right? You're interacting with people that are different than you, that don't have the same things that motivate them that maybe motivates you. And so right here, you know, you're making connections as well. You're connecting with folks that will be with you probably till you die. The relationships that you build here, right? Because look, building relationships within your internal business and your so your customers and all that stuff goes a long way. I don't care what industry you're in. Relationships is that's a huge driver, right? And so that's what you're doing here. You're building relationships, and you're learning how to work with people. You learn how to get along with people or not get along with people. So that's in your seat right there, that's some of the things that you need to be thinking about.
My first and last name is Dylan Pishoff. My question is, for a graduating senior who wants to start their own company, what advice would you give them?
I wish I could give you a whole lot of advice. I mean, that's something I thought about when I came out as well. You know, my wife runs a little flower business, and so I've kind of helped her along the way. You know, I think you need to have a great business plan. Okay, you need to know, you know, all the ins and outs of what you're going to do, because that is a big, big step, right? There's capital involved, right? You know, you got to figure out how you're going to get health care, you know, how you're going to start this business up, right? You need to know all those type of things. You also need to know, you know, where, in my opinion, now I've never started my own business, in my opinion, you have to have enough forethought and vision. Where do you want to see that business after year 1? Where do you want to see that business after year 5? Where do you want to see that business in year 10? You need to have, because you're the only one setting the vision. Like, there's nobody else setting the vision but you, because you're almost like me as a president of a company. That's my job. My job is to set vision. All right, where do we want to be? So that's what I would tell you in your role. Make sure you got an outstanding business plan, and make sure you have the vision of where you want it to be. Does that help you?
Thanks.
Yeah?
Yeah.
We have 2 back there in the back.
Hi, thank you. I'm Tori Mellerine. Talking about what you were saying earlier about building relationships in terms of your developing business career. How do you, because like realistically you're working with these folks for like years, maybe decades, depending on where you are. How do you realistically balance your personal relationships with the obligations of your job and the needs that your company requires?
Yeah, so, you know, when we talked about, you know, personal and business, you have to make that, there has to be a divide there. My job and the folks that work for me, and then the folks that work for them, and so on and so forth, what is the best thing for the company, right? That's business. What decision do I make that is the best decision for the company, right? Not the best decision for me personally, but the best decision for the company, right? Now, outside of business, what's the best decision for me? But also, you know, look, we have folks that grow up through the business, and they may get an opportunity outside of the business. And I'm always a big proponent of, if it's not working out at Barriere and you're going to take a different path and go out, if that's the best decision for you and your family and all those things, that's great. That I'm 100% behind all of that. But when we're here, you know, as an employee of Barriere, what is the best decision for the business? And then, you know, we have core values, we have a culture, it's all over our offices, right? And we really push to, when you're making those decisions, keep in mind those core values, right? Because that's what drives our vision. Our vision is those core values. And so if it falls within all of that, and it's a good business decision, we're going to make that decision. So does that, I think that's was your question? Yeah. Yeah, you're welcome.
Hey, my name is Jackson Morse. So what would be the biggest advice you would tell your younger self in college?
Well, I would say it would probably, you need to learn patience very early on, because that is something that I think if I'd have had more patience early on in my career, I probably would have avoided a lot of failures because I was so quick to act on a lot of things. For me, some of, we talk about strengths and weaknesses, and as a leader, you should be able to easily identify what's your biggest weaknesses and what's your biggest strengths. So for me, it was always patience, because I'm a fixer, a doer. If somebody brings something to me, I would just, all right, well, I'm gonna make a decision, and this is what we're gonna do. Instead of taking in all of the information, all of it. And where I really started to learn that a whole lot was when it came to HR, human resources. And I started to have to deal with situations that involved, folks within the business having issues and all those things. I really had to absorb the information, digest the information, and I may not be able to make the right decision today. Right? That people talk about a 24-hour rule. Really sit on it for 24 hours if it's not critical, right? You also got to make sure that does that decision need to happen now, or do I have the ability to digest the information, get all the information before I jump to conclusions, and then make a decision, right? So patience, number one. If I had to tell my younger self, you need to, go do yoga or whatever you got to do to figure all this stuff out. But when you're 24 and your people are coming to you to make decisions, I mean, you're going to make a decision. So, and it may not have all that patience. So. Oh, got another one.
Thank you. Yep. My name is Sawyer McKelvin, and my one question is, how do you connect with your supervisor? Like, of course you want him to be a mentor for you as you move on in your career. So it's like, what if it's like he doesn't really like you? He's really closed off person. How do you connect with him or her? Or
yeah, that is another really good question, because coming up through my career, I've had a whole lot of different supervisors, right? Some that were really engaged, and some that were non-existent, just weren't there. And this is something that Dr. Lopez and I were talking about before I did all these things, is that what do you need as an employee from that supervisor? Don't expect them to just know what you need. You need to be able to tell them, hey, this is the kind of person that I am. This is what I need from you as a supervisor so that I can be successful. Right? Now, look, that may still not work for you. And at that point, you may have to make a decision on, maybe that's not the right supervisor you need to be working for, or maybe that's not the right company you need to be working for. But, as a supervisor, when you get into that role, you need to be able to ask that person, what do they need? After every meeting that I have with every single one of my direct reports, the last thing I leave them with, what can I do for you? Because that is my job as their supervisor. Right? Not what they can do for me, but what can I do for them? And having that mindset goes a long way. But in the role of the employee with the supervisor, make sure you give that information to that supervisor. It may work. 9 times out of 10, it should work. Maybe that one it doesn't. All right. Oh, we got one in the back. Okay. Last one.
My name is Randy Rogers. On your path or career journey, whatever you want to call it, how did you stay motivated, and what accomplishments allowed you to keep motivation throughout your path to success?
What motivated me is I'm a very driven person. I'm just highly driven from a young age. Look, I was not the smartest person in class. I mean, I wasn't dumb, but I wasn't the smartest. I was probably the most driven, and some of the things that was taught to me, and what my father taught me this at an early age. You don't have to be the smartest person in the room. You have to be the most driven person in the room. And don't ever let somebody outwork you, right? And from age, whenever I could think and talk and all that kind of stuff, that was what was driven into me. And throughout school, throughout my career, that has always been the way that I've looked at things. I'm going to make sure that I am the best at whatever position that I'm in, right? Because I never know when that's going to be my ceiling. I never know when that's going to be the position that I retire in. So I will make sure that I am the best that I can be in that position. And opportunities generally come to you at that point. But motivating, failure's motivating me too. I hate to fail. And, we're a construction company, so we bid on work. I think to myself, I was a very good estimator. You would put all the time and effort into what you were doing, and you put a bid in, and you don't get it. And you know what? What motivated me was like, well, I'm going to go get the next one. And I hate to lose more than I like to win. And that was something that was, I had to look myself in the mirror and say, well, that may not be the best thing, because if I'm just going to do something just to do it, and it's not the right thing for me or the company, it's probably not going to go well. So, but that's what motivated me, just very driven person. Well, thank y'all. I appreciate y'all taking the time and listening.